Well, we are on the air, and this study session of the Town Board of Estes Park, February 25th, 2025, is now underway. Mr. Whitwer, you have a presentation for us on 2025 Public Works 1A Sales Tax Update. Trevor, take it away.
Thank you. Appreciate the time tonight. So tonight I'll go over a little bit of what Public Works has been doing and will be doing in 2025 with our street improvement program, trails expansion, and also new to this year to the program is stormwater. A little bit about our street network. Not a lot has changed from 24 into 25. We still maintain about 59 centerline miles of roadway. Some changes from the 2014 1A initiative going into this year's initiative, 2024, is that we're changing our goals. Our goal in 2014 to hit in 2024 was to reach a pavement condition index of 70. We achieved that about 3 years ago. So now we want to look at maintaining our current value of 80 into the next 10 years. This graphic kind of highlights the cost that it would take to put maintenance dollars into a roadway network if we let it deteriorate too far. So our current PCI rating as of today is 80.5. Our goal is 80, and we hope to maintain that for the next 10 years. And we've come a long way from 2014 or 2015 when this program started. In 2016, our PCI rating was 65. We have a broad range of scores in town streets right now. Our newly constructed roads in the fall of 2024 are currently at that 98, 99 rating, and our worst road in the town right now is sitting at about a 24, which is Steamer Parkway, which I'm happy to say is on this year's project list. This graph illustrates what our average was the last 5 years and also looks ahead to what we're projecting for the next 5 years. We had a significant jump from 21 to 22 due to a large inventory of inspection that was not being kept up prior to 2022. So that's where the jump in the graph comes from. But again, we're confident in being able to maintain that 80, as you can see, moving forward for the next 5 years. A little bit about last year's program. We overlaid almost 3/4 of a mile of roadway and performed patching at approximately 17 locations. We did have more streets planned for 2024, and with other scheduling complications, we pushed West Elkhorn Avenue to 2025. So typically we're a little bit over that 1 mile mark of overlay projects each year. Reclamation neighborhood was started in 2024 due to weather delays and later in the fall. We will be finishing paving of that project in the spring of 2025. This year, including Elkhorn, we have 1.6 miles of roadway overlay planned. That includes Elkhorn, the East Riverside parking lot, Matthew Circle, Steamer Parkway, Grand States Drive, and Big Boulder Drive. And those all range from something as minimal as a 2-inch mill and overlay, which is kind of a surface treatment, to a complete reconstruction, which is what Matthew Circle will be receiving. We have 13 locations identified for patching right now, but that always jumps in the spring once we get through the freeze-thaw cycles. Some other projects in Public Works right now, the ongoing Visitor Center parking lot design. Our consultant has completion scheduled of that design by October of 2025, and then we can move forward with bidding for construction. Again, Matthew Circle will be a complete reconstruct, new concrete curb and gutter, new base material, 4 new inches of asphalt pavement, and some minor drainage improvements as well. And Cleve Street, also ongoing, is scheduled to be completed by May of 2025. Some of our major expenditures through the 1A program, the big ticket items being our capital projects. So we have $800,000 this year for overlay and patching. And the other big portion of that is a little over $300,000 for chip seal and crack seal. And that's more of a minor maintenance activity that we perform on a broad range of streets across the network. Some of our production summary, looking at 24 compared to 25. I'm kind of resetting this. Typically, in the past, we've had an overview of what's been done from 2015 to 2024. But with the new 1A, I'd like to kind of reset. And just for reference, looking at what we have proposed this year, from 2015 to 2023, we averaged a little over 1 mile of overlay every year, 4 miles of chip seal, and a little over 8 miles of crack seal. So we're kind of right on schedule with what we've been averaging the last 10 years. About 90% of our roadway segments have been touched in some way by the 1A network program between crack seal, chip seal, overlay, complete reconstructs, or patching. And I will point out that that's roadway segments, not entire roadways. So one roadway, for example, West Elkhorn, might have 2 or 3 segments in our system. So we've probably touched every single named road in our street system, but not every single segment of every single road. Our streets crew performs pothole repairs with our patcher truck, hundreds every year. In 2024, they performed over 1,000 locations. And again, looking at that PCI of 70 was hit 7 years ago now. I misspoke earlier. It was a little bit longer than I remembered. Looking to maintain 80 through 2034 with the entirety of the 1A program. This graphic really highlights the importance of this sales tax and what our street network would look like if we didn't have this funding. So the top green linear, uniform line on 80 is kind of what we are estimating with our $1.1 million annual budget going towards the street network. If we cut that down to $300,000 annually, you can see the red line decreases dramatically. We'd be sitting around a 72 PCI after 10 years. And unfunded would be even worse than that. So just like to always point out, especially to the public, how important these dollars are and that they make a huge difference on our street network. Jumping over to trails, we've been able to work on 3 of the top 10 priorities in the Master Trails Plan, and the 1A funds have allowed us to be very aggressive in pursuing grant money for these projects, which has been extremely beneficial. This year, we'll focus on reconstruction of Highway 7 and Highway 34 trails. The last 5 or 6 years, we've really been focusing on completing the Fall River Trail. And as you know, the Fall River Trail does have grant funding awarded. We do anticipate getting final design plans for that in the next few weeks. And then we will work through the clearance processes with CDOT and hope to get bidding out for that in the 4th quarter of 2025 so we can get construction underway. And the design of 34 and Highway 7 trails are going to be, by the end of 25 is our goal for design, and then we have funding set aside annually going forward to kind of look at sections of whichever trail we choose to go with that year. But with Fall River Trail, we kind of chased the money and we did random segments that weren't aligned and left gaps in the segment, in the entire trail network. So with these 2 trails, we really want to focus on where's the existing trail now that makes sense to take off from, complete a portion, and then continue to build off that and not leave gaps in connectivity. Some other trail projects that Public Works and Engineering are working on, community drive area around the school. So we did apply for the Safe Routes to School grant last fall, and we will be hearing on that award in March, next month. So that trail is on the east side of Community Drive from Manfred Avenue, north to the dog park area. And then also within that project limits are Manfred Avenue going east towards the school. We would have a trail section on the north side of Manfred Avenue. And then another section of Community Drive just started this week. Our streets crew is replacing the aged asphalt on the east side of Community Drive between Brody Avenue and Graves Avenue. They should be pouring concrete on that tomorrow, I believe, so they are going to wrap that up into March. And another new component to the 1A program this year is the stormwater aspect. We were able to get a little bit of work completed in 2024. Our streets and stormwater crew installed 160 feet of new storm sewer pipe across the East Riverside parking lot, which will help alleviate some backflow up into the street from spring runoff and high water levels.
Was that part of the loop, or was that because of the loop? I remember in the Dairy Queen lot, there was a lot of stuff going on, and then all of a sudden, the water was coming into the street instead of going the other way. What happened
Sure.
with that?
So the pipe was not proposed as part of the loop plans
The
initially.
one you put in?
Yeah, that was not part of the loop. It was in reaction to construction of the loop. So there were flooding events that backflows through the stormwater system that had to be alleviated. We did reach out to Flatiron and Federal Highways to give us a cost so that they could include that as a change order in the project, but ultimately the price was way too high for us to do that externally, so we wanted to provide that service with our street and stormwater crew.
So that was something that the town paid for in response to the project that was completed?
I believe, and I will refer to Greg, I believe we paid for the labor to install it, we did not pay for the pipe.
Gotcha.
Is that correct,
Were
Greg?
there,
Thank you.
were there other issues that came up as a result of, now that it's done, and it seems like the right time to ask the question, now that it's done, have there been other projects that have come up as a result that we have done as a community or public works to mitigate impacts of the loop?
Related to
I
the-
did not do that.
outside
Everything
of-
went dark up here.
Outside of this stormwater project, not to my knowledge.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Did I skip a slide? Okay. What we have proposed for this year, a few small stormwater projects. Our streets and stormwater crew will do some work at the intersection of Old Ranger Drive and Fall River Lane, a new crosspan inlet, and a brand new culvert crossing to alleviate some flooding at from the street system into a private residence at that location. We'll also be looking at a 24-inch storm sewer extension along the Housing Authority property at Graves Avenue and Community Drive. Also will be completed by our street and stormwater crew. And other stormwater maintenance items include cleaning culverts, inlets, manholes, and ditches. And I hope moving forward that we can provide numbers on those items as well. I don't have, miles of pipe or ditch that we maintain or anything like that, but with 1A being incorporated with a stormwater component now, we'd like to provide those numbers similar to what we have for the street network. And the last big project for stormwater this year will be the Performance Park Bridge replacement. And then one other thing I wanted to talk about that I don't have a slide in here. Public Works is currently working on creating a trail maintenance program. So that'll look a lot like the street maintenance program. The having a rating, 1 through 100 rating system where we go out and assess our trail network annually. We're working between engineering, parks, and streets of divvying up responsibilities and looking at what those maintenance needs are. And that'll help us create funding or allocate funding appropriately based on what the needs are from that assessment. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
I love all this stuff, and I love 1A. I voted for it. Okay, any questions or comments from the trustees? Thanks for the
Trevor,
great
do you have an
report.
idea of when the Performance Park Bridge replacement will happen?
I don't. I think
Okay.
that will be a project that will fall under our new stormwater engineers
Okay,
plate.
perfect.
So,
Just wondering in terms of, summer events and activity and that kind of
Sure.
thing. And which, is it the bridge, the one farther west, like where it comes out by the Bighorn, or is it the one farther east by, what is that, Silver Moon?
it would be west.
Okay.
Yeah, the one further
That other
west
one.
of the back
Okay.
parking lot. past
Well,
Bighorn.
it's south,
Yeah.
south, really.
Well, it'd be west of the Bighorn parking lot.
Oh, wait,
Or
okay,
if you go into the
right.
Bighorn parking lot, it's directly north.
South.
Yeah,
of
yeah,
Performance.
yeah, yeah. It's the
Yeah.
farther west on that trail if you're heading west.
Yeah.
Let's
And-
talk about it some more.
I would anticipate that would be a fall, winter
Okay.
project this year. We'd wait till water levels are a little bit lower.
Yeah, we just need a bid for north, and we would have had all four covered. And when you said our new stormwater engineer, is that who I think it is?
It is.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Mahonen. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Whitworth. We'll move on to, well, a topic that's kind of near and dear to me. 2 more weeks, I'll turn 70. Senior needs assessment and recommendations. So management analyst Susanna Simpson. I guess I've been a senior for a while, so it's not like I'm suddenly going to become one in 2 weeks.
Susanna, sorry, will you turn your mic on? Thanks. Perfect, thanks.
Sorry about that. Do I need to go back? Okay, all right. So participants stated that the most important things that they wanted the facilitators to understand about older adults living in Larimer County included the perception that the broader community doesn't care about seniors. Specific words used were disregarded, ignored, overlooked, dismissed, invisible, and forgotten. They want to feel seen, appreciated, valued, and deserving of dignity, and most importantly, respected. In Estes Park specifically, participants expressed frustration with overall town leadership and had the most focused conversation of all communities. So working with the State Demographer's Office, I was able to pull data on how Estes Park's population compared to both neighboring communities and similar mountain communities. So 40% of our population is 65 and older, and that's compared to 16% in the state, 12% in Boulder and Fort Collins, 13% in Lyons, 17% in Longmont, 21% in Loveland, 17% in Breckenridge, 13% in Glenwood Springs, 17% in Steamboat Springs, and 18% in Vail. Our median age is 61. That's compared to 38 in the state. And our largest population block in Estes Park is females aged 70 to 74 at 555. And the next largest population block is males aged 65 to 69 at 482. So stakeholder interviews were conducted with local, regional, and state agencies and organizations, including the State Demographer's Office, Crossroads, the Housing Authority, our Blue Santa program, Estes Park Senior Citizen Center, Inc., the Estes Valley Dementia Adult Day Planning Project, Estes Valley Library, the Recreation and Park District, the Larimer County Office on Aging, and our own Housing and Child Care Division. Additional sources of information were the Colorado Commission on Aging, the National Council on Aging, and the National Institute of Senior Centers. So now I'd like to provide more detail on the organizations that are doing the most day-to-day work to support the senior population in Estes Park. So we'll begin with Crossroads. They manage Meals on Wheels. In 2024, they provided 6,883 meals, serving roughly 35 people Monday through Friday. Seniors are the target demographic, but others who have a need can start and stop the program. They serve as the fiscal agent for the Bridge of Estes, which is a nonprofit serving cancer patients and local providers. They recently created the Helping Hub, which matches volunteers with those in need, primarily seniors. Those volunteers assist with basic household chores and maintenance. The largest need is transportation to medical appointments, grocery shopping, or rides to the Front Range. and they have around 100 volunteers, 65 that are active every week. The Estes Park Senior Center is now established at 1760 Olympian Lane. In 2024, they served 310 members plus program attendees. Current members come from all over the area, including Denver and the Front Range and seasonal residents. They provide their meals through a partnership with Bighorn Restaurant for the last 8 years in running. In 2024, they served 7,502 meals with an average of 29 people having lunch every day, Monday through Friday. Additional touch points include coffee, presentations, telephone assistance, classes, and games. The center connects members to resources such as Medicare counseling, blood pressure checks, and financial and medical counseling. It's run by an all-volunteer board and 2 part-time paid staff, and they are currently working on a campaign for capital improvements. Next is the Estes Valley Dementia Adult Day Planning Project. This was created by a group of local volunteers to address an existing service gap. The goal is to open a facility in Estes Park to serve as a daytime center for individuals with dementia, as well as to provide respite for caregivers. The Estes Valley Recreation and Park District, they serve a significant portion of the senior population through healthcare and standard memberships at the community center, as well as their Elevated Connections program. That program has around 65 to 75 members, and they provide activities and programs for active adults aged 55 and older. Healthcare memberships are offered to individuals 55 and up through partnerships with qualifying insurance coverages such as Silver Sneakers, and they have around 1,700 members with healthcare memberships. Senior memberships comprise around 60% of total community center memberships, and they often refer individuals to the senior center if they're seeking programming more in line with their offerings. Due to our demographic, many of their leagues are primarily seniors. Next, we have the Office on Aging. They are the area agency on aging for Larimer County, serving adults 60 and older, adults living with a disability, as well as caregivers. Their funds are distributed through the Federal Older Americans Act and the Older Coloradans Fund. Their funds are restricted due to federal guidelines, but they were able to purchase equipment and upgrades such as carpeting for the senior center, and they purchased a van for Crossroads Meals on Wheels program. They also distribute the self-directed chore vouchers. They provide resources for multi-generational activities and caregiver support programs. So a key finding of the research was that the primary focus for those working on senior needs is to help seniors age in place and live as independently as possible while remaining in their community. Key themes that emerged in conversation with each stakeholder and shaped the recommendations were awareness of services, digital and technology barriers, transportation, multi-generational opportunities, housing, and socialization. So the recommendations are broken down into 4 categories: those that the town can take the lead on, those that the town can support, areas in which the town should not be involved, and items that will need to be a focus for long-term and ongoing discussion. So first, for town-led recommendations, base funding. As the Estes Park Senior Citizen Center, Inc. is a nonprofit that exists solely to serve the senior population in Estes Park, staff recommends adding the organization to the approved base funding list in Policy 671. Given that they serve the town's largest demographic, they are advancing a key area of the strategic plan, specifically the Exceptional Community Services Key Outcome Area, Strategic Policy Statement 2, we support the needs of our senior community. The National Council on Aging states that senior centers are recognized by the Older Americans Act as a community focal point and are one of the most widely used services among seniors nationwide. More than 11,000 senior centers serve more than 1 million older adults every day in their communities, with 75% of participants visiting their local center 1 to 3 times per week and spending an average of 3 hours per visit. Next, we have centralized resources. Staff recommends that the town create and maintain a web page and a printed document with resources for seniors. This includes links to all the agencies referenced in this report, as well as other items that relate to the themes. Number 3, mayor and trustee chats at the senior center. Prior to 2016, a monthly mayor's chat was held at the town senior center and open to the public. As a result, a large part of the senior community was engaged with town government, and town government was more accessible to them. Staff recommends scheduling these chats at the senior center twice per year to help bridge the current gap and allow easier access to this population, as well as provide an opportunity for seniors to discuss their needs and concerns with town government. Number 4, updates from organizations serving seniors. Another way to strengthen communication and understand the needs of seniors and how they are being addressed is to hear directly from the organizations that serve them. Staff recommends inviting representatives to provide updates to the town board at least once per year. For town-supported recommendations, number 1, promote the federal chore voucher program. The Larimer County Office on Aging is the local agency responsible for administering self-directed chore vouchers. Awareness of this program has been a barrier to participation, and the town should support promoting the program. These vouchers are available for anyone age 60 and older, and they cover seasonal household chores that might be difficult for seniors. Number 2, promote multi-generational opportunities. When possible, the town should promote these opportunities through sharing information provided by stakeholders and partners on email and social media. Number 3, promote volunteer opportunities. The town should promote volunteer opportunities for the organizations serving the senior population, both internally and externally. Internally, this can be through promoting opportunities for town staff to use their paid volunteer leave, and externally, the town can share information provided by stakeholders. Number 4, provide space and resources for a senior roundtable to help eliminate gaps or overlaps in service to the senior population. Staff recommends that the town provide space for and promote an annual or biennial roundtable style discussion for those serving seniors to discuss current needs and challenges. And then finally, number 5, support legislation impacting seniors. The town board occasionally supports state or federal legislation for matters impacting the community, and legislation impacting seniors should be added to the topics brought forward for consideration. For items not recommended, I have just one, allocating staff for a senior services division. Many needs are being met in the community by various agencies and organizations. Through the research in this report, staff has determined that there is no benefit to the town taking on something similar to a senior services division as once existed. The town should allow these agencies to lead their efforts and provide support when needed. For those items for future discussion, we have number 1, housing, a complex issue for the entire population, but especially difficult to solve for seniors. There are fewer opportunities to build adequate multifamily housing. The town should continue discussions with the Estes Park Housing Authority to find ways to support any efforts that come forward to provide housing for seniors. And number 2, transportation. Year-round transportation options are a constant discussion and have been piloted in the past. Availability of consistent and reliable transportation helps improve the quality of life for seniors and improves their ability to be independent. The town's parking and transit division should engage the senior population in discussion to understand their specific needs. So this report is not inclusive of all the needs of such a large demographic, and nor can any one agency or organization purport to have all the answers to solve these complex issues. Though a diverse group of stakeholders contributed information and extensive research was conducted, this report does not include every topic of interest to seniors. Notably, regional and local private businesses that serve seniors and the topic of healthcare are excluded, as these matters are beyond the town's current scope. So in conclusion, the Colorado Commission on Aging provides 8 domains for an age-friendly community: housing, transportation, social participation, outdoor spaces and buildings, respect and social inclusion, communication and information, civic participation, employment opportunities, and community support and health services. Where possible, the town can lead the initiatives that address these domains within its scope, support the varied initiatives being carried out by others, facilitate discussion when needed, stay engaged with the senior population, and improve access to resources for seniors. So we are requesting direction from the board as follows. Do you feel there are any missing elements of the analysis? Are there any parts of the analysis or recommendations that you have concerns about? And how would you like to consider implementation of the recommendations. Some options include the strategic planning process or the creation of a senior needs strategy document. Thank you.
Thanks. Great presentation, summary of a lot of information. Can you go back to the town-sponsored?
Yes.
I would say I don't think there's missing elements.
Okay.
I would say I generally concur with the town-led and town, what was the second one?
Supported.
Supported,
Yeah.
not sponsored. And even though there's probably a prioritization of those things, I'm generally in favor of what you had along there.
Okay.
As far as implementation of it, which was your third item, I didn't quite grasp that. I'll look at that while the other folks bring questions up.
Great job. It was a really good report.
you.
I really like how achievable the town-led objectives are. Like, yes, we could definitely be doing those things tomorrow, basically. So thank you for that. I have a question about adding them to base funding. Does that mean that your overall recommendation for the amount of base funding then would increase proportionately? Or are we kind of thinking the same amount of base funding now spread with one more additional agency, or would you imagine that would go up as well?
Yeah, so I can field this one. Base funding essentially just means that we treat it as we would treat a line item request from a department in the budget. So it would not, we don't carve out $200,000 for base funding and then apportion it out. We allocate money as it's available when compared to other town priorities. So to answer that question bluntly, no, adding them would not necessarily subtract from other organizations, but it does add one more competing organization for resources. So there's not a direct impact. It's not saying, well, we're going to have to reallocate some of the base funding, but there is an impact because there's more requests coming through.
It's a very well maneuvered answer to my question, Travis. Politically correct. But that's what sounds good. And all depends on what money we have the budget at each year. I would say to answer your third question, I don't think anything's missing. This is great to start. I would say for the third question about how we might want to incorporate this moving forward, it seems natural to put it into the strategic planning process since we're about to embark on that. So to be able to kind of put that in as we go seems like it makes a lot of sense for me versus adding, the additional kind of report. But I could be swayed otherwise, but that's where my gut instinct would go.
Thank you.
I agree with Trustee Hazelton. I think it makes sense to put in the strategic plan. Doesn't make sense to do some type of strategic plan off to the side without looking at the whole big picture. It all needs to be taken in there. Kind of the big question here is the base funding. How much were you thinking, or did you have something in your mind, or? I mean, that's just funding it is a little vague. I'll be a little more specific than Trustee Hazelton.
I would hesitate at this point to proffer a dollar amount. I think so much of it depends on what our financial projections ends up looking like, what the application looks like, what the competing base funding and competing town applications look like. So it's less than $30,000 is typically where we start with base funding requests,
Okay.
but I wouldn't want to get any more specific than that. A lot of it will depend on the application itself as well as the resources available.
Now, with the base funding is normally for just basic operations, and they can do with it what they need, right? They would still, if they had a specific project or a specific thing come up, could make a request for.
That's
additional
correct,
funding.
Trustee Lancaster. Typically, base funding is just for the overhead expenses, recognizing that those are often the hardest expenses to fundraise for nonprofits, which is why this is a separate category which has extra hoops to jump through to get listed on it. We do occasionally have a base funded entity that comes through with a specific request as part of their base funding request as a one-off. Essentially, we would like to maintain our base funding and then add 1 year of enhanced support for XYZ. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen occasionally.
So that is an opportunity for them if something came up.
That is an opportunity for specific requests, especially if they're one-time requests, because base funding entities cannot come through the community initiative funding process, which is typically where those programmatic requests come from.
And then my last comment was, you didn't mention much about the nonprofit network. It seemed like the convening of the roundtable, that would be a great thing for them to do.
It's a great point.
I mean,
Yeah.
we could provide the sources.
Sure.
But they have connections. Most of these organizations, not all of them, are nonprofits.
Yep, that's
And that's
correct.
their role, is to convene and work with, and there may be some other nonprofits that work with seniors.
Yeah.
So they might be a great one to talk to Cato about, them taking that on as a project a couple times a year, doing a senior roundtable of nonprofits and other senior services organizations.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
I agree with my fellow trustees on those points. I think it's particularly important we put them in base funding. There's, I'm fairly new to the community compared to most of the people up here, but I know there's some residual resentment for what happened with the senior center and the Parks and Rec District and the Rec Center. And I think it's pretty important for us to recognize their importance to our community as a separate and independent entity. So that one in particular, and I definitely agree, let's not form a new strategic planning process. So.
Thank you.
Thanks for that report. It was good. And it actually opened up some things that I hadn't thought about when talking about how can we, the town, best support the seniors, because I don't think it's just write a check, but I think that that's going to be a really important part of it. My early recollection of the senior center is when Lori Mitchell and Kelly Claypool, there were 2 or 3 employees that I think were town employees that worked at the senior center. It was a modular building, and Toby Hale had this new fundraiser. We came up with house numbers. So in a sign company, I made the house numbers. The seniors sold them. All of the profits went to their senior center campaign. They raised a lot of money and they worked really hard. And I always saw that as a thriving hub for seniors. They would go there for food, and they would go there for social time, and they would go there for everything. They had a van, they drove. I mean, it really was a little beehive, and it seemed like it was very successful. So, Trustee Brown, you mentioned a rocky breakup, and I had that sense, but I didn't follow it very closely. I think that was probably about 2018 or 19, but now they have established themselves, and I think that they have proven that it's an important part of the community. It is somewhat sustainable, but I also get the sense that they are on a thin margin, and they don't have everything they need to really be successful or be that beehive again. So I am inclined to really reach out and support the seniors. And I think there's a couple groups of seniors in the community, and I'm only 55, but I qualify for a discount at Culver's. So, and at the theater, it used to be senior price was 55, and everyone loved that. So as I look at this and I see people that I know that this is a very important part, 40% is huge. When I didn't realize it was so much more than the state and other communities. We have a responsibility to take care of these folks. There are some seniors who are here, they could care less what we talk about tonight or what we spend money on or if we can help them because they're good. They don't need our help. They probably don't want our help either. There's a large number of people I think that really do need a hand. And that senior population, as large as it is in our community, I can't believe we don't talk about it more. So I would not only be in favor of that base funding pronto, but I would like to encourage the senior center to look at maybe something that they could, I know they have one big room in the building. It's different than it used to be with multiple rooms to do different programs. I think they could do better. The question I have for you is about the funding an employee. It's the one thing that the report ends up saying, let's not do this. Mm-hmm. Why is that such a strong recommendation not to fund someone who could probably increase their hours from 10 to 1 to something, or increase the program, or increase the connection with the town, with the local government? I think that would be the big benefit of that kind of a relationship with us.
So the do not recommend item was more about creating that division as we used to have. So we used to have a senior services division that was staffed. And the reason is I mentioned the diversity of the group, of such a large demographic. So there are multiple agencies and organizations that are working to meet the multiple needs. It's not really there's not really a one-size-fits-all kind of solution. So I think we're better served just supporting those efforts than trying to lead those efforts.
Do you know how much the town directly pays to senior programs? Is there an amount? I should look at the money person.
How much the town, sorry.
Yeah, is there an amount, Travis, that the town allocates for seniors at this time?
Not a direct allocation, no.
Not a dollar?
Not a specific amount that we allocate towards that specific demographic. Of course, seniors are served by many of our programs.
Totally
But
understand.
not like we used to have a senior services division.
Right.
We don't have anything like that anymore, which is part of the impetus behind the base funding recommendation.
And that blows my mind, that we have such a large number of those folks in this town and we don't allocate money. So I would say that I'm going to advocate for that, and I'm going to advocate for a lot more support from this board and this community, whether that's through base funding or another means. But I think we need to do better for the seniors in our community. I thank you for the report. I
Sure.
appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.
to
Thank
weigh
you.
in.
And thank you. It was a great report. Figures were surprising. I didn't think that our percentage was quite that high. I agree with my other trustees here. On strategic planning is where it needs to fall. I do have a question on the promote the federal chore voucher program. So how would that look as promoting? So could you explain a little bit? I'm not familiar with the program.
Sure.
I didn't even know the program existed.
Yeah.
So education, I think is the key.
Yep.
But could you speak on that?
Sure, absolutely. So a couple of ways the town can do that. I mean, number one, simply just sharing information on our channels through email and social media. We could have printouts in town hall. It would certainly be an inclusion on the centralized resources recommendation that I had. And then really working with the Larimer County Office on Aging to find out from them what they would recommend, the best way to do it. And of course, I think the locations, like the senior center, the community center, having information there would be helpful as well.
Okay. So does this program it's volunteer based, I imagine.
It's a self-directed chore voucher.
Okay.
So there are two funding periods, basically every 6 months. Individuals can, I believe it's up to $250.
Okay.
And it's one per household. And basically, those funds are administered by the Larimer County Office on Aging.
Okay.
And so we can always link to their resources. That's usually our preferred way of promoting things for our stakeholders and partners.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that information. I agree with points that have been mentioned. I won't reiterate those, but good job.
Thank you.
Just a question. Something easy that we could do on our set. We talked about the chats and trustee talks being there. Have we reached out, or when in your research, did you find out if they wanted us to do that?
Yes, I did ask.
Just making sure.
Yes.
Okay, that's the biggest thing. 'Cause
Yes.
I do think it'd be a great idea.
Yeah.
But we're here. So,
Yes, I did confirm that before I put it in the report.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just have one other thing. I think the idea of a senior page on our website is a great idea, a centralized place to get to all of that.
Thank you. Yeah, that was something every single stakeholder that I met with mentioned, that they just don't feel like enough people know about what they offer. And so we just really don't have a centralized place for that.
Great. I think you got good input there and pretty strong consensus on a lot of it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have scheduled on the agenda from 5:25 to 5:40, a brief break to grab dinner. It is now 5:30. We'll scrimp a little bit there. How about 5:42, we will reconvene, okay. All right, in the interest of time, we will reconvene the study session so we can get to these important topics. Our next item is the Stanley Park Master Plan and Performing Arts Center, and Director Rob Hinkle is going to lead off.
Rob, can you turn your microphone on?
We're here to talk about the Performing Arts Center, Stanley Park Performing Arts Center. And basically what I'm going to do is really just going to give you an overview, things that you've already learned, just to refresh your memory, and then also hand it over for a presentation from the arts community. So basically, after we reviewed the master plan that we did in 2019, this became really the best location on property as far as putting any type of a performing arts center if we were to build one on the property. You know, it's right along Highway 36 there, but you know, it's the best location, but also there are things that, you know, it does take a pretty good chunk of land as far as the event complex. It's, when we reviewed it, you know, we're looking at, it's about 10 to 12% of our land that we're going to be utilizing for this project. And so a lot of it has to do with, okay, when we have our bigger shows, for instance, the rodeo, the Hunter Jumper Show, which is basically the entire month of July almost. We would need to use that property as far as at least the parking area that's being built. We've discussed that, and they're aware of it as far as, you know, that could be a problem. They were looking at other solutions as far as shuttling people in, that type of thing, which could be done, I assume. But it's not, you know, it's a location, but it's maybe not a perfect location is what I'm saying. So the present situation is that our current master plan does not have a performing arts center on it. The current plan for Encore would utilize 4 to 5 acres, which is about 10 to 12% of the property. Since 2019, our business has really changed. I mean, we put together this master plan really in 2018. It was published in 2019. And it was 2 years after I got here. And our business has changed a lot over those years. So we've had bigger shows utilizing parts of property that we've never utilized before. We've got larger rodeo, larger horse shows that, and it seems like their trailers just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger when they pull in, and trying to park these around property. So things have changed over time. You wanted us to do, the town board wanted us to put together a community survey, and we did. We had 376 respondents. I know this was all shared with you, but I thought I would just review it real quick. And no surprise, I mean, most people are supportive of the arts. And so when you look at this, people are supportive and also supportive of a performing arts center also. I was surprised about the none of the above, 92, but you're always going to get that, I assume, but for the most part, they were supportive. And if you look at these next two questions, basically what they would attend outside of Estes Park and what to attend inside Estes Park, people are going to support the music, visual arts, and performing arts. Immersive arts didn't score as well as the others. And then you come up, as far as supporting the art center itself, it's about 58% of the people were in support of, full support of the art center. And the next one, if it's at Stanley Park, just a little bit less, as far as the support, as far as the art center being at Stanley Park. There were a lot of comments, 171 comments that we had shared with you. 96 were negative, 46 were positive, 29 neutral, and I'm sure you've read through those. In review, basically, they've come with a financial assumptions as far as what the design and construction would be, as far as the amount of attendance. I think as a town board, we need to be, comfortable with these assumptions going forward. It is a pretty big project to be built on town land, as far as on the event center complex land, but also, the amount of land it's going to take, and then also the dollars that, as far as relocation and infrastructure expenses to make that happen. And so really we're looking for requested direction as far as, does the town board agree with the proposal for the use of the land? If so, should the master plan be revised to include the performing arts center on the property? Or should the concept be treated as an ad alternate if fundraising targets are met with a certain timeline? If you have questions for me, I can answer them now or later, but I can also hand it over for the next presentation.
The last, well, thanks for the presentation, short presentation. The last time I attended a major presentation of this was just before I actually took office, and so I was listening from out there. The 7 million, some portion of that is something that for the some of the stables and other stuff. Some of that is stuff we're going to have to do anyway, correct? Eventually.
Eventually, if that's the direction that we want to go. But if this is going to be built, there is a domino effect that all those projects need to happen, versus making them happen over years. This needs to happen before that building gets built. So the camping area has to move, the barns have to be, the old barns have to be torn down, the new barns have to be built. So all those have to happen in succession right away, plus of course, the roundabout entrance coming in. So it speeds up a little bit of that process versus kind of spreading it out.
And in my mind, as a member of the public there, I kind of walked out thinking about half and half. About half of that 7 million was stuff that eventually on the rodeo grounds and event grounds will eventually invest anyway. Granted, we've had a couple hard years of depressed sales tax, et cetera. Right. And then the other half would be things that were driven by attempting to do this project, approximately. Mm-hmm. Is that about accurate, or about half and half?
Well, as far as what we have, as far as the if I understand the question, the master plan, we want to, be able to do the projects, but not necessarily, we can be specific about what project we need to do when. So they don't need to be at once, per se. So we could tear down the old barns and build the new ones before we build a new entrance off the loop or, move the campground. So we could do those projects without having to do them all at one time, basically.
When I moved to town 21 years ago, this effort was by a different name,
Right.
already in place. They had already been doing it for some years. There had been work in that direction. Fast forward 21 years, and I know they looked at different locations and other stuff. This has been a long time trying to come to roost. It's only an observation. You don't have to comment on it. My entire time in Estes has been watching that rise and go out of sight and rise and go out of sight, but we'll talk more about that. Questions and comments from the trustees before we move to whatever the next phase is.
So I've got a question about how what may happen at the Stanley impacts all of this, because it seems as if they're going to build supposedly a big film center. Of course, they've been talking about that for a while too. And, it seems like maybe that facility could be a multiple use facility so that some of this could be used there too, although I don't know what the restrictions on all of that are or how that might integrate. But it's just natural to think about, do we need two major entertainment facilities like this, or should it be consolidated somehow into one? But I don't know if the proponents of this would have any comments on that.
I don't think I have an answer for that either.
No, I'm sure you don't, but we have some proponents here.
Talking to,
Why don't you come up to the mic,
So we can.
Lars?
in talking to John Cullen and their visions there, it's more focused on music and film and not, there will be no theater.
No theater.
No theater or anything of that sort. So it would be, in addition, what we're proposing is in addition to what's still going on with that, with different purpose. And so we, like I said, there would be no theater. It's just focused on music concerts and film presentations, as far as I can,
Okay,
I understand from.
And there's no openness by the Stanley to consider a multiple use, basically?
No, we haven't, no one's really approached him about that, but I think they're focused on, he wants that film center, and that's his main focus right now.
No, I'm sure that's true, but,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, how about the other question that's sort of related to that is, would there be sufficient demand for two types of things like this? I mean, it seems like they would largely pull from the same sort of customers, somewhat, not entirely.
Yeah.
But, anyone that's interested in the arts is interested in all kinds of different parts of the arts. So I guess one of my concerns would be whether there's been sufficient studies of the demand for this, particularly in light of if the film center comes around. So I don't know what sort of studies have been done on that.
I don't know about studies, but, what we're proposing to do is enhance, it affect our other performing arts groups, the chorale, the oratory society, the ballet company. We're trying to enhance providing facilities for all of us to have a home.
Yeah.
None of us have a home.
Right.
And so this is an opportunity not only to have a home, but also to have rehearsal space, performance, a central location to be able to enhance our arts that already exist here and been around for decades. And it's time for us to think about how we can enhance the love of our arts in our community, because there's so much talent here. And we could do so many more things when we have a facility to work with.
Sure.
Right now we're limited to what's available. And that's, it's pretty limiting.
And
to
the
what we can
location
do.
is fabulous. I mean, it seems to me to be the perfect location for this. The other question I've got is the ability to raise the kind of funds you have to raise to do this. I know there is some wealth in this community, but, you know, I just don't know the extent to which you can access that for this. And do you have any sort of pre-commitments from donors?
We got one right now for $1 million.
Okay, one for $1 million, but, and I know that you wouldn't necessarily have to raise the whole 20 million or 22 million, but, because you could finance some of it, I presume, but I would think you'd want at least half to be donated.
Right. Of course, Tim's prepared probably to answer some of those questions. I just wanted to respond to your
Okay.
question about the film stuff.
Very good, thank you.
Bill,
Mike, Bill.
you wanna, yeah, thanks.
So with your question, Rob, about the concept be treated as an ad alternative if fundraising targets are met within a certain timeline, can you refresh us? I mean, you may not be right this second, but maybe Travis can help too if you don't have it on your mind. I know the last time we looked at it at this location, we had timelines. And I just need that refreshed and what happened and that
Right.
kind of stuff.
I don't think we had certain timelines at that point. I
We
don't
did. I thought we
did
had to rate, they had to rate certain.
Did we have timelines?
Yeah, so really brief history. The EPIC project, which is separate and distinct from this effort, was initially looking at the downtown core. They were looking at where the slab was, the vacant parcel down there. Ultimately determined after a number of years of research and evaluation that wasn't the best spot. Came to the town, asked to locate on Stanley Park or to have a commitment on Stanley Park. The board at that time, it was a pretty short turnaround. I think it was either 6 months or a year with the option of the mayor to extend that. And I think the mayor exercised that option once. So it either ended up being a year and a half would be my guess. I'd have to go back through and pull that information. But effectively, did not hit those targets after the year and a half, and the effort kind of went off into the ether. So this is a distinct effort, but we have used essentially performance-based financial markers as an effort to, and the thought behind that, not to tangent off too far, is that at that time and likely now, the board was not wanting to create an open commitment for, 50 years for this part of the property, but they were curious to see if that fundraising could come to fruition and that this thing could actually get built. So they effectively, they gave them a chance, the EPIC folks a chance to show that they could fundraise the amount of money they said they could fundraise in order to locate on that parcel.
I just have a quick question before the presentation. So you said there was things that need to be done that have been in the to-do list for a long, long time. Believe me, I'm a horse person as well. Remember, Jim Cana's there, and the horse barns are horrible. But anyway, so if those things have to be done before a building were to go up, if that's the plan, what kind of time frame, putting that on the fast track, would that need to have to complete that? Because obviously that has to be done before giving them time to raise the money. And those projects need to be done and not keep putting them off, in my opinion. Right. So I see kind of a win-win with kind of putting us to get something done instead of putting it off. Meanwhile, allowing them to raise the money in that time frame that we're moving the building, moving things and rebuilding. So can you just estimate if things went perfect? How many years?
In Estes Park, that's a big ask.
Well, I know that.
Yeah, but you're
anyway,
talking several years at least.
3 to
those
5 or beyond?
Probably 3 to 5
3 to
years.
5, that's kind of what I thought.
And it's hard for Rob to answer that question because he has to compete for capital funding to
Funds.
do that if the town's funding it with all of our other needs. And as you all know, we have significant general fund capital needs. First and foremost, the police relocation.
Yes.
So there's not a magical source of money to do all this now. And frankly, those stall barns, even though they're in desperate need of attention, are a few orders down the list when we look at all of the general fund capital needs that are facing us in the next 5 to 10 years. And a lot of it depends on what other alternative financing sources there are. So it's hard to put a number on when the town might have the financial resources to take on something like the stall barn, given that we've invested a significant amount into capital on that site in the last 10 years with the construction of Impact and the improvements that we've made out there. It's not exactly been a neglected part of town from a resource allocation standpoint.
Yeah, thanks for that input, though. That's, I'll save the rest till after the presentation.
I have another question. Could you expand a little bit on the practical implications for the rest of your programming out at the event center if this land were devoted to this project? What's it going to do, and how difficult will it be to restructure things and to make it work for you?
When it, really, there are certain times of year, it's a small piece of property to work out of. Rodeo is a good example, but also we have other events, and even our new events, Frozen Dead Guy Days and the ski joring, which was very successful, and I think that'll just continue to grow. They're utilizing parts of our property that we would never, didn't think about in 2018. Okay, so 2019. And so there is a pretty big impact. Even when we put the water fill station in off of Community Drive, that cut out a portion of where we parked a lot of horse trailers and things like that. We knew we needed to do that, so we were for that. But it did make an impact, and so it's hard to say. And as business changes, just like it has changed over the last 5 or 6 years, and those types of events and bigger events that we do, how that impacts. And so there is an impact, and even with what our initial 2018-19 plan, as far as moving some things and building some things, that necessarily doesn't mean that we had to put that new entrance off the loop. We could still do that, save the couple $1 million or whatever it is, excuse me, to do that, but then do the other projects that need to be done, because we don't necessarily needed that entrance moving forward.
Otherwise, yeah.
Yeah.
So how much of it is the whole problem with horse trailers and stuff, and how much is it other types of activities that happen there? Because my impression is a lot of it is horse trailers and campers there during the horse events. And that is probably the majority of the problem for you?
Yeah, and of course, we do multiple events on a weekend. So we'll have a horse show going on, we'll have a show downtown, other things happening, and which requires camping or what it may, So we have a lot of things happening on property, and we only have, I think it's 36 camping spots on property,
all? Okay.
but we utilize other places to, for dry camping and that type of thing. So it's, there are times that we utilize quite a bit, if not all of our property.
Thank you.
The add alternate concept, we probably are going to need the other part of the presentation to really listen to that, to understand what fundraising target would need to be met and within what timeline. If the town were to agree to that and keep open for a certain amount of time in order to meet that target, how much is that? How much time? Ultimately, I think that has to come to this board if we were to come to some kind of contract or terms in that regard. And then the other piece that I'm curious about, and I think Trustee Brown might have hinted at it, or somebody hinted at it down at this end, in regard to will they come from out of town, or is this, the great majority of Fine Arts Guild or the other theaters groups that we've had in town, I think I think it's the local population that goes to those, oratorio, chorale, as well as the theatrical productions, the kids' shows that they use High School Stage or Hempel or whatever. I don't even know if they still use Hempel. Do they still use Hempel? Yeah, that's a piece of work. So those are the things that are big in my mind. What fundraising target would have to be achieved, knowing that each year construction costs go up and it'll continue to happen? What kind of timeline would that be? And will they come from out of town for this, or is this primarily fed by the population that currently goes to those shows, like I do?
Yeah, I think that would be a good question.
I guess so.
Yep.
Maybe we move to that next phase here.
Right. I'd like to have Tim Phillips from the Arts Guild come up.
Who has the best shirt in the house today? So.
I have 3 art shirts, and I went back through each of them trying to decide which one to make the best impression.
Well, it's kind of a
And
Jack.
actually, all 3 of them would, but this is the more subtle one.
Is this a Jackson Pollock? Yeah, we have a Jackson Pollock shirt.
You can see that?
Yeah, so.
How are you, my friend?
I do like that shirt.
Oh, I can get you one of these.
Subsidize Jackie and Bunny from the town clerk's office.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you very much for letting me speak to you today. And I want to start off with, you have asked some really great questions to Rob that I'm the one who needs to answer. And I think I've got answers for almost all of those for you. And if I don't, I'll be glad to make it up. If you look across the country, almost every major city in this country, and many of the smaller towns as well, have dedicated space for performing arts and visual arts in their communities. Estes Park is actually an anomaly. We're one of the few communities out there that doesn't have a dedicated space for the arts to perform in and use. Now, I'm not criticizing, because I understand that this is a very fiscally responsible community, and they don't want to put themselves out there where they can find themselves with a debt service that is ongoing by maintaining a performing arts center, where many cities and towns, they have invested in those arts because they value that and recognize it, but it does become an ongoing burden for some of those communities to finance that and maintain those. Estes Park has said, no, we don't want to go down that path. We're talking about building horse barns, and we can't find the spare change to do that. We certainly can't finance long-term a performing arts center funded through the municipality of our community. What we've asked and what we're proposing is, first, let's see if we can get that master plan adjusted so that we can have an option for a performing arts center at Stanley Park. That's the first line of business that's got to come before you to make that decision. Second is, if you will allow the Fine Arts Guild to build a performing arts center, it would be a home for the whole of the arts community. And within the venue that we're proposing right now, it would have a main theater, about 300 seats, which would be for larger productions. We have the Cabaret Theater, which is for more intimate performances. There's exhibition space for art, both two-dimensional and three-dimensional, as well as the usual things for meeting rooms, classrooms, things like that. The other element you see up there, it says inner sanctum. That's really where we stand apart from all of the previous arts organizations who've wanted to build and have a performing arts center in Estes Park. Previously, they've all looked at ticket sales through theater events and music events to generate the revenue to support that performing arts venue. The reality is most ticket sales for theater events like that will not support a venue like this. That's why there's the endowment for the arts. That's why every major municipality has to put money in. Where we differ from those organizations is we have built in a revenue generating element to our design that will generate the revenues to support our facility through the years, so we're not coming to you for money to help support it. Now, we can get into Inner Sanctum and the immersive art experience much more detail as we progress in my presentation, but I'm just touching on that right now. What we would like to see is a 100-year lease ultimately on the property. If you'd like to do it as a 50-year lease with a couple renewals, that's fine. Obviously, if we're going to invest the amount of money that we're talking about investing to build this, we really want to be able to get the bang for our buck, if you will. So just touching on this real quickly, as Rob already did, is yes, that's where we're looking at building the Performing Arts Center, and the parking lot is going to be a significant part of my presentation as we touch on that. And Rob also showed you the survey that was done, and we're going to touch on that survey again in just a minute or two. But what I'm going to point out is just to the west of the Encore building, basically between the museum and the Encore building, is where the horse paddock is currently located. It's a grassy hillside. Right now it's shaped kind of like an amphitheater. It really makes sense to consider that as an amphitheater. However, all of you have just suffered through a year of discussions on noise ordinance problems and complaints in the community associated with noise ordinances. When I first proposed coming in here with this venue, I proposed putting in an amphitheater, but as I've listened to those complaints, and as I've looked at what happened in Colorado Springs with that $55 million Ford amphitheater that was just built, the venue is wonderful. The performances are wonderful. The noise complaints are outrageous. If we put an amphitheater there in where the paddock is, we're going to have the exact same problem. Sound travels, there's no way around it. And right now, if you talk to anyone who lives on the north side of the lake, they're all going to tell you they know every event that goes on at the fairgrounds because they can hear it. All those people just to the west, all those homes, they can hear it. So let's take the amphitheater out of our discussions. If sometime in the future someone wants to bring that back, we can discuss it then. But let's not even consider that now. Now, touching on that, we have that $7 million price tag of expenses that are associated with bringing in the Performing Arts Center, and that's all part of that domino effect that things are going to have to be moved because of this. The amphitheater by itself was almost $500,000 in cost, because now you're going to have to move the paddock, you're going to have to find someplace else on the property, there has to be water for it, all that sort of stuff. That's infrastructure that is addressed. So let's just knock off $500,000 of that $7 million. It's just that easy. Yes, I ate my Wheaties this morning. Now, as the survey that Rob addressed earlier, what do you feel is missing from the Stanley Park complex? The performing arts certainly was a big, now let me touch on the survey by itself. Is when we talk to design concepts, when I talk to design concepts, the ones who conducted the survey, I asked them, well, how many responses do you typically get when you do these sort of surveys? Because they do a lot of them, because they do a lot of these municipal projects around, and so they have to do surveys a lot. And so, Tim, we typically see around 100 or 150 responses to a survey that we do. They were surprised that we had 376. Our little town had a much bigger voice and opinion about what was being asked than they see in a lot larger cities. That our small population really felt like a performing arts center was a valuable asset, and it was almost half of the respondents felt that way, I think is very telling for us as a community. Walking paths scored second highest, the amphitheater third. But now we've already discussed, well, let's not do that amphitheater. And here you've seen this visual before. Yes, there's always going to be naysayers, and that's about a quarter of the respondents said, no, we don't need any of that. Those are the people who are the drawbridge mentality. They're here, they don't want anything else. Let's just pull up the drawbridge and stop all other tourism, all other expenses from the city. Let's just not do anything. That's that voice. And you all know that voice. You have had to deal with it on plenty of your other meetings and so forth. Come on. Just quickly, I'm going to show you, this is just an architectural suggestion of what we think we would like to build. Most of you have seen it before, and this is not a final design. If we get to that point where we're actually going to build the building, we will probably go through quite a few revisions. But just to touch on it, you see the big the auditorium there with its 200 main seat and 100 upper. You see the cabaret, you see the gallery space. Over in that fourth corner, that's the entrance point to go into the immersive art experience. But the immersive art experience is actually on the second floor of the building. We're not building a bigger footprint, we're just going up another story. And so that contains that up there, and it allows us almost 20,000 square feet for an immersive art experience. Now, our detractors, as Rob mentioned, and there were quite a few respondents who had responses. Two of the significant ones were the impact to the fairgrounds and, of course, the $7 million price tag. Been there, done that, tried it before. Why are we doing this again? I have two answers. That one is, if at first you don't succeed, you try again. Secondly, you build a better mousetrap. We're building a theater that's got an immersive art experience, which is a revenue generator, which makes the theater viable. Where before, the other ones were not really financially viable because they couldn't support themselves. Cowboys and fine art don't mix. I would say talk to Frederick Remington or talk to any of the other well-known artists in the world who do Western and wildlife art. There's plenty of people out there who will tell you Western art is wonderful. Now, that impact to the fairgrounds, we're going to hit on that right now. As Rob said, the biggest issue around this is the parking lot right there next to the facility that is currently used for those horse trailers and RVs. But now let's examine that. When is that parking lot used? Basically, from the middle of June to the middle of August. That's our equestrian time slot where most of those activities take place. The rodeo, the other horse shows, all that stuff happens during that same window. Guess what? That same window is when the school district is out of session. I've already been in contact with the school district and discussed with them the possibility of us leasing part of that high school and middle school parking lots, and we can work out a shuttle system for our visitors to the Encore Center to park up there, so that now we don't have to do anything with that fairground parking during high season when they need it the most. We can rent big, long golf carts. You know, they make 15-seater golf carts and stuff like that. So we can find a way to shuttle people back and forth so we don't have to disrupt that parking lot. Now, that's a significant part of Rob's $7 million. That's actually about $5 million of it, because not only do you have to move that parking lot, you also have to move all that infrastructure for the RV hookups and all that stuff. So all that stuff has to go with it. We talked about the domino effect, the horse barns. Well, now we're going to have to move and replace the horse barns to accommodate that new parking lot. Now, if we're not moving that parking lot, we're not dealing with having to move and add new infrastructure for RV parking and so forth, we don't have to also tear down the horse barns right now. And as Travis has said, there really isn't any money in the budget right now to do that anyways. So let's not look at doing that right now. We're going to come back to this because I've got a solution for that too for you. I came with lots of answers. So now, if we take out $5 million, because we're not having to move that parking lot, we're not tearing down the horse barns right now, we take out $500,000 because we're not doing the amphitheater, we're down to about $1.5 million of expenditure that we're still staring in the face. $1 million of that is estimated to be what it's going to cost to add a fourth leg onto that roundabout. Because it was thought that if we put in that performing arts center, we're going to have a whole nother entrance just to bring that traffic in directly to that performing arts center. Right now, the third leg that comes in on Community Drive is able to support the traffic that goes to the rodeo events. Any event at the rodeo is going to draw more people than that performing arts center. We only have 300 seats in our main theater. If we run both theaters, we have potentially 400 seats. The rodeo accommodates much more than that by itself on any given day. If we know there's rodeo events going on, we either not do an event on that day, so we're not adding that additional traffic in, or we modify our timing so that we can stagger those traffic lines so that we're not starting a rodeo event and a theater event at exactly the same time. There's some simple logical approaches here to resolve that, so maybe we don't have to add that fourth leg to the roundabout. Ultimately, that's not my decision. That's not your decision. That's going to be Colorado Department of Transportation, and their wise men are going to have to resolve that and make that decision, and we'll have to abide by whatever they say. But I think we can make some educated, logical discussions around maybe there's not a need to add that fourth leg in. Another benefit of not bringing that fourth leg in, that fourth leg is going to take out a significant part of parking right there. We need that parking right now. If you bring that fourth leg in, we lose some of that parking just for that road to come in there. So if we don't have to take that $1 million and spend it on a fourth leg, we're down to now about $500,000 out of the $7 that we're still staring in the face. And we're still going to have that expense. Because what I suggest and I propose is right there on Community Drive where that side entrance is into the fairgrounds, I think we should put in a real monument entrance, attractive, proper signing, everything we need to really welcome our guests in who are either going to the performing arts or going in for the horse events and so forth, and they're coming in. They all need to have that proper welcome, and that's the perfect place for that. Now, economic impact. That was part of the discussion here. And Mayor, you're one of those who addressed that. Are we going to have enough people coming to our event that's going to justify building this? And are we going to get front rangers, or are we strictly going to have locals? Now, we know that there are approximately 5 million people live within 3 hours of Estes Park along the Front Range. We know that as a town, our visitorship comes both from Colorado and globally. We know we have international visitors. We have people from every state in our country and Canada and Mexico. They all come here. We are a tourist destination. We always have been a tourist destination from the time Joel Estes and Lord Dunraven and Griff Evans came here. They looked at this valley and said, people will pay to come here. Well, they're still doing it today because we are that location. We are a tourist location and a tourist destination. That's not going to change. Fastest growing segment of Colorado is right now is the I-25 corridor from Thornton up to north of Fort Collins. We know that. We've seen I-25 expansion going on over the last half dozen years. We can see all the development in all those communities along there. Right now, 10 of 20 towns in the state of Colorado that are fastest growing are along that I-25 corridor. As you can see by my note there, Greeley and Fort Collins are both expected to double in size within the next 25 years. That's a lot of new growth so close to us. People who are looking for day trips, looking for weekend outings, where they want to go, if they want to go up into the mountains. If they're on that north I-25 corridor, either they got to go to Denver and get on I-70 and go west there and deal with all the traffic and congestion and everything that we all know about that exists there. But what makes more sense and what is more convenient is going up to Estes Park, where it's close. The roads driving up here are both beautiful and not nearly the traffic that you see on I-70. Now, yes, as we continue to grow, we're going to be increasing that tourism coming up here, but right now our roads can accommodate that, and I think we can continue with that. The big drawers right now in Estes Park, of course, is Rocky Mountain National Park. And Mayor, I've seen several articles recently posted where your concerns about the federal government cutting back on Rocky's budgets and so forth, and that might have a significant impact on our community. They may actually have to shutter our doors at the national park sometimes and not let as many people in. Well, that's an economic loss for us that we need to find some way to offset, because we know for at least the next 4 years, nothing's probably going to get any better with this for us. We know one of the other reasons people come to Estes Park is to come to our shops. The other entertainment venues we have, they stay in our hotels, they eat in our restaurants and bars. We know the Stanley Hotel is a tourist destination, as it has been for quite some time. That once The Shining was promoted there, that's become a destination. We all know that. With the Film Institute coming, we know that's another tourism growth opportunity for the Stanley. As Lars pointed out, the venue that the Film Institute is looking at is not designed for performance theater other than music events, not really for live theater and so forth. So they're not really apples to apples type things. The other thing to keep in mind there, the Stanley Hotel is being acquired by the state of Colorado. So us just coming up and saying, hey, we want to come and be up there, that's a whole different discussion. And being on their property for the state of Colorado and how all that's going to work out is really anybody's guess, but I don't see that as a viable opportunity right now. We know the YMCA is a draw. We know how many people go there every year. But now we're talking about bringing in the Encore, a center for the creative arts, and an immersive art experience called Inner Sanctum, another new tourist destination event for people to come to. Now, why is that significant? Like the Film Institute and the Stanley Hotel, the Encore and Inner Sanctum are indoor events, which means they can be something people can visit any time of the year. It can be cold outside. It can have the wind blowing, but they're indoors. They're not going to have to suffer that. Where we know most of our other entertainment venues in this town, go-karts, all those sort of activities, even the Alpine Slide, the tramway, they all shut down when the weather is not conducive to it anymore. We change that dialogue because now we've got something for people to come to. Now, specifically, yes, the theater events, the music events that are going to be produced by the local talent, that's still probably going to be mostly visited by local residents. Inner Sanctum is that difference because Inner Sanctum, an immersive art experience, changes everything because that is something that people are going to more and more, and how people are consuming art is changing. They don't want to go to museums anymore and just walk. They will go to museums, but as a role, when people are going on holiday, you will see that the opportunity for larger than life experiences are more and more the norm for them. They're looking for something different. If you've watched TV at all in the last few weeks, you will notice that Universal Studios is right now advertising that they have opening, I think it's 5 new immersive experiences at Universal Studios. And they're specifically saying immersive experiences. If you go to Denver, Denver Center for Performing Arts has a division as part of the Denver Center for Performing Arts that is specifically bringing in short-term immersive experiences. this is a trend. It's something that's continuing. I have brought up Meow Wolf in the past, and Meow Wolf is getting ready to open their 6th location. It's going to LA later this year. There were concerns to say, well, Meow Wolf has laid people off. You know, are they going downhill? No, they brought in a corporate executive from Disney who first thing he did was say, let's look at where we're at and let's cut the fat. And they started getting rid of those redundancy employment positions within their locations and generating more revenue to help finance their new openings. It's a simple business decisions. It's not a matter of Meow Wolf's failing. It's a matter of a business decision to cut out the fat. We're looking at a population now coming up who grew up with video games and selfies. These people look at everything in an experiential way. They want to see themselves. They want other people to see them. Look at what I'm doing. Come see what I'm doing. Look at me on the internet. I love playing games. I like to being involved in that. And they share in those experiences. An immersive art experience taps into that mentality. And what are we looking at? That population right now is 18 to 30 years old. That means we've got 50 years to tap into them going forward because they're going to continue to do the behaviors they're currently doing. That 50 years is our client base that we're looking at for us, but also for you as a town, because that's where our population's coming in, and that's who our future population. I'm almost 70. I'm not going to be here to enjoy all this in a couple more years. But there's a large population behind me, behind you, that is coming up and are looking for things to do. We all know one of the things about Estes Park is people who come here come back year after year after year. They come here, they build these family traditions, and they build on them every year. Then the next generation, they bring their grandkids, and all those people come up, and it keeps progressing along that. I know some of you came here through that sort of relationships of other people who came before you, who fell in love with Estes Park and have now made it their home. That population base that I'm talking about are that next generation coming here, and we're going to be looking at them doing the same thing. Immersive art as a bigger picture, right now it's projected to be $180 billion in expenditures by 2026 for immersive art experiences. And that's globally, that's not just Colorado. But for instance, there are a couple, well, there's probably somewhere around 50 or 60 of immersive art experiences that I'm aware of across the United States. And many of them are already adding additional locations because it's so popular and the growth is there. But internationally, the same thing is happening. If you go to Japan, there's an organization called Team Lab, which has 2 immersive experiences. Now, they just closed one of them for a few months and increased its size by 50% and added 3 new exhibits to their location. They're getting over 2 million visitors a year to Team Lab in Tokyo. Now, that certainly is an obvious population there in Japan. That's not like anything we have here, but it shows that interest, and it just keeps growing. Audience engagement. You know, why is immersive fun? Because it inspires people, it provokes things, happiness, relaxation. They're playful, it's fun, and can be thought-provoking. I mentioned before, 24% of the travelers who are looking at vacations this year are looking to include an immersive experience in that vacation plan. And then if you look closer at that and look at the demographics, when you go down to those 18 to 24-year-olds, it's over 50% of the population of that group who are going on vacation, who are looking for an immersive experience, something that they can be a part of and share with their friends and family. You asked about money and how are we going to finance this. Yes, that is a big concern, and it's a realistic one. But it's not yours to worry about. That's incumbent on us to raise that money, because we're not asking you for money. We're asking your generosity in allowing us to use a piece of land that right now the piece of land that we're actually asking for, not the parking lot, not the paddock, but that land in between it, which right now is used to store detritus, stuff that it's cast off, so we don't know quite what to do with, but it's too good to throw away, but we still have it. Well, let's find someplace else to dump that and put a performing arts center there that will generate revenue. And when we're talking about visitorships and we're looking at those people, they're going to come up year round if there's enough to do in Estes Park. You brought up, well, what about the Stanley? If they're doing something, is there going to be something here? How many go-kart tracks do we have in town? How many golf tracks do we have in town? People will do different activities during their stay here. Now, if we have an experience up at the Stanley with the Film Institute, and you can look at horror film sets, or you can come over to the immersive art experience and spend a couple hours wandering through 40 rooms of creative art that are on the floor, walls, and ceiling that are, some of them respond to light, some of them respond to sound, your movement, all those sort of things are incorporated into a design of an immersive art experience. So it becomes an all-involved experience when you come into that. People can come do that, and they can still go to the Film Institute. And during the summer, they can still go ride a kart, they can still go mini golf, they can go ride horses. But during those shoulder seasons, during those off seasons, when those events aren't available because of the weather, we're going to be able to continue to bring those people in. We know people still come up here. Why did ski joring do so well? Why does Frozen Dead Guys do well? We know those short-term events draw people to Estes Park. It's a matter of us having something here to be a draw. Now, unlike those events, whether it be the Highland Festival or any of those others I mentioned, those are all 2 or 3 day events. One out of a month. We're offering a 2-day event to draw people in. What the Stanley is doing, what we're proposing, is to offer a daily experience year-round that people can come and enjoy.
All right. Well, we've exceeded the time we allocated to it, but I want to have some time.
Let's not stop. This is so much
Well,
fun.
I do think we need to have a little bit of just some short Q&A.
Okay.
But we'll have to get on to the board meeting in a little bit. How long would the town have to hold that space for you? So how
Absolutely.
much time and how much would you have to raise? And knowing that price tags go up all
Right.
the time, that's my major question, is how those factors come into play. And the magic bullet of the immersive stuff, I think you've done a good job of describing the future of that and selling that concept. Whether that could be the engine perpetually or for a long period of time of decades that kept it going without town investment having to come in and rescue the thing, that could be
Sure.
discussed extensively, I think. But that's the number one thing that's in my mind is how long would we have to hold that space and how much would you have to raise in that time to know you're going to get over the top and build this thing?
I came prepared for that. Actually, when I first made this appeal to the town 2.5 years ago, when we were talking about building it out at Elm Road, and at that point, I was asking for a 5-year window. What I've found in my research and talking to people who are involved in raising money for these events, if you don't get it in 5 years, you're not going to get it. And there's no real reason to continue to beat a dead horse if you can't get that money raised in that time. Now, how much money do we need to have? Obviously, we know we're looking at a moving target for the actual final cost for the building. But what I've been told is that we should be able to break ground once we've raised about 75% of what our expected building costs are going to be. Once you get that first 70 to 75% of that money accumulated, and you can start building the project, there are those investors and there are those donors who are the wait and see. Is this really going to happen? And once they see you break ground and you can put a hard hat on their head and walk them across that campus so they can see the physical building under construction, that's when the last 25% typically comes in, I'm told. Right. Yeah, I'm
More in the future,
anticipating
yeah.
that we're looking at, when I approached this a couple years ago, I was saying 15, 18
Yeah.
million dollars. I think we're probably looking 20 to 25 million right now, and depending on how long it takes us to raise that fund, it may go up some. Construction costs go up. We're losing a lot of our potential labor force back to being sent out of the country, so that's going to change a lot of those dynamics as well. And until we get farther along in a building design, we can't give you a real hard answer on what that cost that building is. Right. But talking to architects and getting some general assessments, we're looking somewhere in that 20, 25 million.
Other trustees, comments, questions?
I think, Mayor, you have the key question. I think this is what we need to consider. I do like the location. I think there's probably some way to figure out how to make it work there with the rest of what happens at the event center there. But I do think we need to think about, number one, are we willing to commit to 5 years or whatever number we come up with? And, I think that is kind of the key question. And then, how certain are we that we're not going to have to come in and subsidize this somehow, going forward if the full amount isn't raised. So those are the key questions for me, like they are for you, Mayor.
Now, if I may, Mark, yes.
Yeah, but we're really short on time, and there's a couple of things we have to do before 7, so I'm afraid that I'm just gonna ask my questions. After listening to your presentation tonight and having the period of time in between the last time we talked about it now, I have more questions and reservations tonight about this than I did before. I really like you. The idea of this has been going on for a long time. Most of the time I've lived in Estes Park, there's been a conversation about this project. So when you just said a few minutes ago, hey, if you can't do it in 5 years, you aren't gonna do it. I'm concerned about that. I'm really concerned about encumbering the town's facilities and the use of the Stanley Park. And I have more concerns now. We're talking, right, this is our work time. I have more concerns now than I did before about this project and that spot. I think as a private business adventure, I would support it. I would financially support it. I would go to it. But I don't feel comfortable subsidizing it with the community's funds and space. All of the little pieces to make it work, with shuttling people, with moving things, delaying the barns, staggering traffic. All of that seems very complicated to me to get this to work tonight. So I wonder what our objective is tonight. These folks need an answer on what does the town board want to do here? So I don't want to say, well, go to the next step, try it again. But we're not voting on this tonight.
I understand.
I'm just trying to provide you feedback.
Sure, I appreciate
And I
that.
can be much more specific, but I also don't have any more time to talk about it here.
Yeah, I think that we're going to have to reserve some future time in the not far future to take this to the discussion level and to get that guidance from the town board. But this was very immersive. Thank you for the information. But yeah, we'll move forward with it. You've given us much to think about. We'll work with the town clerk and town administrator on figuring what's the best way for us to get to a discussion of this and decide how to give guidance.
May I make 2 really quick, short points?
Really quick, short.
Okay, first one is we have received, the Fine Arts Guild, a number of letters of support from other arts organizations in the community supporting this, but we've also had a letter of support from the Chamber of Commerce, who recognizes the potential here. That's the first note.
Feel free to send them along, too.
Be glad to. The second thing, I talked to Travis about could there be a seat tax or some sort of tax associated with doing this venue that would then generate a revenue come back to town. And he's explained to me that by our charter in this town, we cannot just add some new random taxes in here and do that. But what we can do, if I understand you correctly, we can put in what I'm calling the Stanley Park Investment Fund, which people, when they come and buy a ticket to the immersive art experience, we can add a 5% fee onto that, which would go into the Stanley Park Investment Fund. And those revenues coming in from that could then be put back into eventually building the new horse barns and doing the other infrastructure repairs that are being delayed and all that delayed stuff that we're looking at there. By our building our Performing Arts Center, we're going to be able to generate that extra revenue to help offset some of those costs and not bring it back to you to pay for.
And this is good, and I think that can be part of our extended discussion.
Good.
So thanks again, Mr. Phillips, and to the rest of the crew. Much appreciated, and we will discuss further.
Thank you all. Mark, if you'd like to get together and sit down with me individually, I'd be glad to.
I have 2 pages of,
Yeah,
good. I'll
right
help.
there. We do have to touch base quickly, Town Administrator Mahalik, on the semi-annual compliance review with board governing policies, policy 1.10, self-monitoring of the board. Does any board member know of any incident or event where we went out of bounds on that self-monitoring policy?
I think we're in compliance. I went over the whole thing. The only request I'd have is, can we get, in the policy, it says we're supposed to notify the mayor a week in advance of any concerns we have. And I don't think we got this until less than that or about that. So if we could just have more notice the next time this comes up, for us to do that and to follow our own policy. I mean, if I brought up a problem, then I'd have to bring up that I'm violating the policy because I'm bringing it up outside of the week, inside of the week of when we're not
Well,
supposed to do
just to
it.
trigger a heads up 2
So,
weeks before or something.
Yeah, if we could just
right.
have more notice in the future on this one. But that said, I went through the whole thing and word by word, I sent you a little note, but the rest of it, I think we're following this.
Okay. Any reports in regard to that from any trustee? Okay, seeing none, we'll move toward future study session agenda items. And I think you had them published in the packet. I took a look at that.
Yeah, Mayor, so Estes Park Housing Authority Board appointment interview process. The Housing Authority would like to discuss with the board. They have some thoughts or suggestions or questions if the board would like to take a different tact in that. So we'd like to schedule that for March 11th, not for this current process, but for the next process.
Right.
We need to do the annual review of the vacation home cap. We'd like to schedule that for April 8th. We need to talk about the bed and breakfast vacation home license transition. We'd like to talk about that after we go through all the other hosted short-term rental discussions on April 22nd. And then we'd like to talk about flock safety cameras, the police department in May.
Those are all good and sound good. I might say you might have an open spot on March 25th. Mr. Beatty from the Board of EPH has indicated to me that he might want to push that out a meeting or two to have more extensive information. So March 25th, we may have a little oasis of space there that you could bring some of those things up. I'll let you know within the next week.
Perfect. And then March 11th, we have an open space. So if the board wanted to have another study session conversation about the Stanley Park Master Plan, we could. Alternatively, if the board wants to have this discussion around an action item, staff could work up an action item that would essentially entail an adoption of the master plan, a number of different opportunities or options for adoption of that master plan, and then an agreement of some sort if the board wants to entertain and discuss that in a more targeted way versus having continued study session conversations where we may get some direction or we may not end up on a actual decision point.
That was a broad question. I do like the idea of March 11th for talking about this more because it's fresh. We've got the information.
Yeah, I think I'd agree March 11th. And I appreciate that offer, but I think even though we've had study sessions on this, I'm afraid that we aren't ready to, I think we would just be,
Right.
go around and around in circles on any potential. So I think one more, and I'd be open to 11th if they were available.
All right, any other topics for study sessions? Then in that case, this study session is adjourned. We'll be back at 7 for the board meeting.